Part 94. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 931. To the west of the Princeton University campus, the scenery is beautiful. Some houses and villas are nestled in a large garden composed of grassland, sycamores, and fragrant iris. It was afternoon at the moment, and a group of students on the campus were sitting on the lawn, playing the accordion. The sun was shining on the faces of those students. The smell of the grass was particularly fresh in the afternoon Sunday under the melodious rhythm of the accordion. Those students' faces were filled with laughter. The laughter spread far with the wind. A parrot flew from a distance and was flying over the grass. It's such a carefree and wonderful time. In the second-floor window of a villa with dark red walls and beige roof, Timothy Leopold, the vice president of Princeton University and the dean of the School of Music, was opening a corner of the curtain with a finger holding a pipe. Looking at the laughing students on the lawn outside, he let out a sigh. In addition to sighing, Timothy Leopold's slightly greedy eyes also looked over the beautiful and energetic figures with ponytails on the lawn. He swallowed secretly, and then rubbed his big belly with some self-pity with one hand. The plaid shirt and brown suspenders he was wearing looked particularly special against the big belly. Hard. As he grows older, his body is no longer upright, and his muscles are gradually surrounded by fat. His fingers can still play the piano, but his whole person has lost his majesty. Those young and beautiful female students, and the beautiful female teachers in the school, it no longer belongs to him, and all that can belong to him are the beautiful campus memories of the past, and, by the way, his son. That is his pride. Only in his son can he seem to see himself. The continuation of youth. A familiar piano melody came from behind. Timothy Leopold lowered the curtains, turned around, and came to Mikhail, who was playing the piano. His face became a little more serious. You are just playing this piece proficiently now, but there are still some flaws and it's not perfect. If you want people to think that this music is composed by you, you must integrate your soul into it and make it a part of your body. Only in this way can you impress people. You see, the opening of the short long rhythmic motive at the beginning of this piece is like the echo of thunder, the cry of the soul, and more like the knock on the door of fate. You must play that shocking feeling, and not only does it leave an impression on people's ears, the person who wrote this music is a genius, and you must regard yourself as a genius. Mikhail raised his head and said quietly, I feel like I'm good enough. No, my son, you are not good enough. Leopold shook his head, a hand fell heavily on Mikhail's shoulder. You were indeed good enough at last night's reception, but the concert in the capital was attended by music masters such as Amzat, Trajan, and Mino, as well as those picky professors from the National Conservatory of Music in the capital and many music critics. Any flaws you have will be ignored. You can't escape their ears. You must make them feel that you can resonate with the music during your performance. Do you understand? The real music flows from your heart, not from your fingers tapping the keys. I have contacted you. Editor-in-Chief of Musician magazine, they will send someone to do an exclusive interview with you next week to warm up your concert in the capital. This is your chance of destiny. This piece of music will make you an instant hit. You must seize this opportunity. Mikhail seemed to muster up the courage. Father, I have a date in the afternoon. Upon hearing this, Leopold's eyes sharpened and he curled his lips. Is she the woman in the blue evening dress last night? Yes, Mikhail nodded, his expression a little embarrassed. She is very charming. We made an appointment to meet in the cafe this afternoon. Mikhail, do you know under what circumstances the war beasts trained in the army will be eliminated? Leopold suddenly asked. Mikhail shook his head in confusion. War beasts in the army, as long as they mate more than 3 times in their lives, they will no longer be able to complete evolution and perform dangerous tasks, and will eventually be eliminated. The same goes for people. Men must cherish the energy of their lives. A man, before he can truly achieve success, he must put his energy into his career. Believe me, as long as your concert in the capital is successful, you can have as many women as you want in the future, in the capital. Celebrities, more. Leo Porter was teaching his son earnestly, when suddenly, an unexpected voice sounded in their ears. You're right. As a father, you are indeed very devoted to your children. However, aren't you afraid of being exposed if you steal other people's works and pass them off as your own and then use them in the capital to defraud? This sound startled the two people in the music room. The father and son turned their heads and looked towards the door. They saw a man with black hair and black eyes standing at the door of the piano room. That man, they are no strangers, it is the summoner Xiaopingan who stole the show at the reception last night. But why did Xiaopingan come here suddenly? Why didn't the servants at home come in to report? Moreover, how did Xiaopingan know? The expressions of both father and son changed. You, why are you here? Who asked you to come in? Mikhail stood up angrily, his face flushed slightly, and he glared at Xiaopingan. Of course you should treat a gentleman like a gentleman, and treat a thief like a thief. If I want to come here, I'm afraid not many people can stop me, Xiaopingan said with a smile. I want to call the police, Mikhail yelled. Okay, please. I'm just about to report it to the police. Someone stole my piano music. Mikhail. Leopold suddenly stopped his son, and he took a deep breath. I want to talk to Mr. Xia alone. You go and rest for a while. Don't let anyone disturb us. Mikhail left the piano room, and Xiaopingan walked in calmly. In addition to the piano room also had a coffee table and a sofa. Leo Porter invited Xiaopingan to sit on the sofa. I know this may not be honest enough, but I spent a lot of money to buy that piece of music. As soon as the two sat down, Leo Porter said directly to Xiaopingan. Bought? Yes, a few days ago, a man brought a phonograph stone over, and the phonograph stone contained this tune. He said that as long as I gave him 3,000 thalers, he would give the phonograph stone to me. Oporto still had a clear memory of Xiaopingan's ability. He knew that it was better to be honest in front of a powerful person favored by God, and he also felt a little guilty about this matter. Xiaopingan understood. It was probably recorded by someone at the scene using a phonetic stone while he was playing that day. The phonograph stone is a very special stone. In the hands of the summoner, this stone can be used as a prop for collecting sounds by consuming a little bit of divine power. Then, as long as the phonograph stone is placed on the fire, the phonograph stone will be recorded. The stone will emit the collected sound. Of course, the function of this thing is similar to that of a tape recorder, but it is not as good as a tape recorder, because there is a time limit after the recording stone leaves a sound. In the event of a thunderstorm, the recording stone will become blank again and cannot be used again. If you want to use it, as long as it is burned 3 or 4 times, the record stone will be broken and cannot be used repeatedly. Mr. Leopold, I don't care where your song comes from. As the original creator of that song, I now give you 2 options. The first option is that you issue an apology statement in the newspaper and state that the music was heard by you, not by your son. I will let it go and let this matter end here. If you still want to use that music to compete for fame and fortune, then, believe me, I can easily let it go. Your tricks will go bankrupt and your reputation will be ruined. Xiaopingan looked at Leo Porter coldly and said. Leo Porter swallowed. I know that piece of music was not composed by us, but how can Mr. Xia prove that that piece of music was composed by you? Xiaopingan smiled, and without saying anything, he went directly to the piano and sat down, and began to play the beginning of the second movement of Symphony of Destiny. When the music came out, Leo Porter he was stunned for a moment and a little excited. Based on his understanding of music, he knew at once that what Xiaopingan had just played was the continuation of what his son had played before. It was the second movement, 2 parts. The two are one. In Leo Porter's expectation, Xiaopingen only played the beginning of the second movement, then stopped and did not continue playing. This piece is called Fate, and this is the second movement of the piece. The first movement is the knock on the door of fate, the second movement is the cruel fate. Finally showing its face, it darkly and endlessly repeats in various tones, looking for opportunities and peeking into gaps to break into people's lives and dominate everything about them. There are the third and fourth movements behind it. The third movement is about the spreading repetition and struggle of fate. The last movement is a glorious triumph over fate. Do I need to prove it again? Leo Porter finally shook his head and hesitated. I want to know, what is the second option Mr. Xia gave us? What's the second option? You can buy this piece of music from me in its entirety and say it was composed by your son. I will give you all the second, third, and fourth movements of this piece. And I won't expose you, you can do whatever you want with this song. Ah, Leo Porter had a look of excitement on his face, and he took a deep breath. Mr. Xia, why are you doing this, and what are the conditions? I am a God-loved person. I am not interested in becoming a musician. What I am interested in are world beads, so my conditions are also world beads. You only need to give me 4 world beads. The 4 complete movements of this destiny, it's yours, it should be a good deal for you, Xiaopingen said with a smile. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 932. Of course Xiaopingen also wants to use destiny to exchange for more world beads, but the Timothy family is not a wealthy family. In this world, so-called pianists, musicians, and artists, to put it bluntly, as long as they do not control the means of production and power, his circle is actually composed of high-end wage earners, who can be regarded as the mascot of the upper class. If he is a lion, it will be bad if the father and son break up. 4 world beads that he had not fused before. Xiaopingen felt that this should be something that the Timothy family could reach with a little tiptoe. In total, 1 world bead was a movement, and the price was fair. Of course, this is a long-term situation. Xiaopingen plans to take a long-term approach to catch the big fish. If the Timothy family really becomes prosperous through destiny in the future and can master and utilize more resources, then there will be opportunities for cooperation between the 2 parties in the future. In addition to destiny, I also have hundreds of world-famous songs here, which is enough for Mikel, a musical genius, to pretend to be a big fan for a lifetime. Luck is an invisible and intangible thing, but it does allow you to obtain the boundary pearl easily and reasonably. On the same day, Xiaopingen left Timothy's house and returned to his villa. He saw the carriage of the Ceylon Empire consulate parked outside his door. The consulate was very efficient in handling matters and directly brought a large box to Xiaopingen. 100,000 thaler banknotes and 10 world beads were sent. Looking at the big box containing 100,000 thaler banknotes and the 10 boundary beads on the table, Xiaopingen behaved like a gentleman and asked with deliberate concern, "Is Baron Meyer okay?" "I was thinking of the consulate. I went to visit him. It was really not my intention to hurt Baron Meyer. Those who came to deliver the things were a counselor from the Ceylon Imperial Consulate, a secretary in charge of foreign affairs from the Courland City Hall, and a local celebrity. The secretary and the local celebrity came as witnesses to witness Baron Meyer and the consulate. Fulfilling the promise, after all, is related to the face of the Ceylon Empire. Tens of thousands of taels and a few world beads are nothing. Baron Meyer is fine, but he was very excited last night and felt a little unwell. The consul has asked Baron Meyer to temporarily return to China to recuperate." The counselor of the consulate replied with a smile. The consulate blocked the information about Baron Meyer's death and did not disclose it to the outside world, because announcing the death of Baron Meyer at this time would make people think that the cause of Baron Meyer's death was the failure of the contest with Xiaopingen. There may be other reasons such as Meyer's death. There are rumors that the Baron committed suicide or died of anger, which is not good for the image of the Ceylon Empire. Xiaopingan sneered in his heart, but on the surface, he could only shrug and say, "That's such a shame. Baron Meyer is very powerful and a respectable summoner. My victory last night was just a fluke." Several people talked hypocritically in Xiaopingan's living room for a while, and then the counselor from the consulate and the two people who came here with them left, and Xiaopingan also sent them to the door. After watching several people leave in the carriage, Xiaopingan returned to the living room, put away the money, looked at the 10 world beads again, and shook his head with a wry smile. Yes, there are 10 boundary beads sent by the consulate, but those 10 boundary beads are definitely the cheapest and most common boundary beads that the consulate can find. Among the 10 boundary beads, Xiaopingan has already fused enough. There are 8, and only 1 rising from the pole and 1 walking around Divine Power World Pearl Xiaopingan have not been fused. But Xiaopingan had no way to ask the consulate to change the boundary beads just now, because when Xiaopingan had a bet with Baron Meyer last night, Xiaopingan did not stipulate what boundary beads were required, so no matter what boundary beads the consulate sent, it was considered fulfilled. Bet. Forget it, grasshoppers are also meat. At least there are 2 more world beads. Xiaopingan put away the world beads and smiled slightly. That night, he merged the 2 divine world beads again, and was 1 step away from the 6th level 3-star summon. "Master, there is only 8 points of divine power left." And on the next day, the 8-point gap in divine power was filled with new boundary beads, and a new divine bone appeared. Because Helena's business became busy the next day, and the next day Xiaopingan came to work and performed a detoxification technique on a wealthy aunt in her 50s. Helena, who stole the show at the Kondra Castle reception, and the women who had undergone detoxification techniques to become more beautiful and younger were the best advertisements, attracting the attention of every woman at the reception. Xiaopingan didn't know how many women Helena had contacted. Anyway, Helena told Xiaopingan to be prepared to perform detoxification once or twice a day because the next 2 or 3 months would be very busy. In the following time, Xiaopingan became busy as expected. He went to Helena's villa on Odin Street almost every day. Sometimes he even stayed in the villa for most of the day. Xiaopingan could spend almost every day in Helena's villa. I saw 1 or 2 noble ladies or ladies from Brandy province in Na's villa, and after completing the detoxification technique for these ladies, I went home with 1 or 2 world beads and the reward. As for the boundary beads as a reward for performing the detoxification technique, Helena communicated with Xiaopingan in advance every time about which boundary beads were acceptable and which were not. Therefore, every time Xiaopingan used the detoxification technique, he would get a brand new one. Boundary beads. No matter how powerful the summoner is, one person's ability to collect world beads is limited, but if the wealthy families or people in power in the entire Brandy province come to collect, it will be simple. They only need to find one that Xiaopingan has not fused with, just come over with the boundary pearl. In this way, Xiaopingan's fusion speed of the world beads is very scary. Almost every day, he can fuse 1 or 2 new world beads, and his strength is changing every day, rising slowly. The Timothy family also sent 4 new world beads and completed the transaction with Xiaopingan. In the past 2 months, Mr. Coin has only issued 2 very simple missions, both of which were related to the search and eradication of the remnants of the Life Muge cult in Kalanda. Moreover, the missions were both held late at night. After the 2 missions, most of them were no fish were caught, only a few minions who were lured into joining the cult were caught, and they destroyed a simple blood sacrifice ceremony of the Life Muge cult. The investigation bureau took over the follow-up. Kalanda summoner Black Market Xiaopingan also went to Xiaopingan twice. Each time he went, he added money to exchange the world beads and spiritual crystals in his hands for some new world beads that he had not fused. In this way, for more than 2 months, almost no one could notice that Xiaopingan's strength was improving with each passing day, and he had quietly advanced to the 10th level of summoner. Even Helena thought that the world beads collected by Xiaopingan had not yet been fused, and she was looking for the corresponding divine sense crystal, because this was what most summoners who collected world beads were doing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 933. The room was filled with the faint scent of lavender, and everything seemed so peaceful. Finally, he pulled out the 2 silver needles stuck in the taekong point on the woman's feet. Xiaopinggan put the silver needles into the basin next to him. The water in the basin suddenly turned dark, and the naked eye could see the surface of the water. There's something dirty floating around. The woman lying on the bed was still asleep. The smell of lavender could make it easier for the woman who had undergone the detoxification technique to relax and facilitate the elimination of toxins. Xiaopinggan nodded to Helena, stood up, and walked out. Helena followed out of the room. When Xiaopinggan and Helena walked out of the room, the maid in the room had already walked to the woman lying on the bed. Before the woman woke up, she began to massage the woman with essential oil to help her recover. In the hot spring pool, when the woman wakes up, she can enjoy it in the pool filled with roses and red wine. After performing too many detoxification rituals, this detoxification ritual was modified little by Helena, making it more popular and relaxed for the women who came to detoxify. This made Xiaopinggan it feels like working in a beauty salon, but no matter what, as long as there are boundary beads. Ms. Winnie seems to have a lot of toxins on her body. Helena said when she came outside the room. Mainly there are too many lead poisons and a special mineral alkaline toxin, Xiaopinggan replied. After performing so many detoxification techniques, Xiaopinggan became more and more proficient in the detoxification technique. These 2 toxins. There are a lot of lead poisons in cosmetics. Lead poison is in lipsticks and blushes and penetrates into the body through the skin. The alkaline toxin can corrode the surface of women's skin, so after use, it will make women's skin look shiny. There is a feeling of tightness and youthfulness, which is actually very harmful to people. Ms. Winnie usually likes heavy makeup. As time goes by, more toxins accumulate in the body. As you have guessed, Ms. Winnie is the reception queen of Bremen. Her family runs the largest mine in Bremen. Helena said, and joked with a smile, Bremen is Brand, a city in the west of Die province. In the past 2 months, the ladies Helena found for Xiaopinggan were no longer limited to Courland. In addition to detoxification, I think you can now become a beauty consultant for women. I am currently preparing to acquire a factory that produces and sells women's cosmetics in Courland. After it is completed, I would like to ask you to help me take a look at those products. Is there any problem with the cosmetics production process? I know nothing about cosmetics, Xiaopinggan spread his hands and said. I have confidence in you. You just need to help me see if there are any problems with the production process and raw materials of those cosmetics. I want to hear your opinion. The reward is 2 world pearls. Helena already knows what is easier to convince Xia safety. Okay, let me give it a try, Xiaopinggan nodded in agreement as soon as he heard about the boundary bead. Helena suddenly looked at Xiaopinggan and sighed, I have a friend in the capital area who will come to Courland next month. That person is very well connected in the capital area and knows many groups that have a large number of spiritual crystals. I can introduce you to them. You know, spiritual crystals are more precious than world beads. This kind of thing cannot be bought with money, especially some rare spiritual crystals. The world beads you collect now, it's best to fuse it with the corresponding divine sense crystal to avoid trouble. Even if I'm not a god's favorite, I still know how dangerous it is to fuse the world bead without the divine sense crystal. Helena didn't know that in the past 2 months, Xiaopinggan was no longer the Xiaopinggan before. She always thought that those world beads Xiaopinggan had not yet merged. Okay, thank you, I will pay attention, Xiaopingen smiled and said, "Do I need to come again tomorrow?" Helena's eyes flashed with a deep light filled with ambition and wisdom. Today's MRS Winnie is the last one during this period. There will be no more brandy in a short time. I have worked hard for you during this period. You can rest for a while next month, and then we may go to the metropolitan area, where there are more ladies who need detoxification treatment, and there are more resources. Trust me, by then, you will have everything you want. Yes, I have a hunch that in the capital area, you will become a summoner famous throughout Red Rhone, and you will find all kinds of world beads everywhere. Going to the capital area, Xiaopingen pondered for a moment and looked at Helena. You know I have other identities, which are not so free. Don't worry, I will help you handle the matters in the investigation bureau. It can be easily solved in a long vacation. Hearing what Helena said, Xiaopingen said nothing. He knew that Helena really had such ability. He said goodbye to Helena, came outside, got on Longwu's carriage, and left the villa. At this moment, it has been winter for more than a month in Kaland, and the temperature has suddenly become cold. Although it is already afternoon, in the sky with low lead clouds, the sun is hiding behind the clouds, leaving only a slightly yellowish patch in the sky. In the halo, pedestrians on the street have already put on thick winter clothes, the trunks of the sycamore trees on the roadside have begun to become bare, and the cold wind is rolling the withered yellow and haggard leaves on the ground, and then they are crushed by the running wheels. Xiaopingen held a boundary bead in his hand and squinted his eyes slightly to look at it. There seemed to be a thin stream of green smoke floating in the boundary bead. The 3 small seals for water-seeking technique were looming in the green smoke. It seemed that somewhat strangely, Xiaopingen was still wondering whether this world bead was the secret orbit bead. It's been a long time since I've seen this kind of strange world bead. The wisp of green smoke in the world bead made Xiaopingen think deeply. As far as Xiaopingen knew, the water-seeking technique was not a Chinese Taoist technique. On the contrary, in the ancient Chinese army, there were people who specialized in searching for water, either as scouts or as witch doctors who accompanied the army. The army traveled in large numbers and dug wells in dry lands in search of water sources. The method of finding water was related to smoke. If a 10th level 3-star God's favored person receives dozens more world beads, his divine bones should be complete. Before becoming a god, the only step left is to ignite the divine fire. Xiaopingen murmured to himself saying. In the entire Brandy province, as far as he knew, there was no 10th level of God's favored ones. The level of God's favored persons reached the 9th level or above, and they were already very rare. Strong men of this level were in the army and the capital, or can be seen in the headquarters of the Investigation Bureau and some important fortresses, but rarely seen in local areas, because the ability of this level of God's favorite is already important enough to affect the local situation. In just a few months, he has easily advanced to the 10th level, which even made Xiaopingen feel unreal. When the carriage arrived at Binhu Street, Xiaopingen discovered that many carriages had arrived in front of his villa. It was as lively as a vegetable market. Countless people crowded at the door of his home, including a large number of reporters. He was holding a camera, taking photos amidst bursts of flashes of magnesium powder. On the side of the road, there were still many people holding up a picture of a handsome, slightly cold man, and shouting slogans. The content of the slogan was a person's name, Andrea, Andre, yeah, Andrea. Lady Margaret, wearing a somewhat expensive red fox fur coat, was standing next to the flower stand between their home and her own home, surrounded by several reporters. Mrs. Margaret may have never experienced such a scene, so she seemed a little excited, but it was obvious that she had dressed up carefully. When Xiaopingen went out at noon today, Xiaopingen saw her and found that she was not like this. Mr. Xia is of course my neighbor, and we are still friends. He likes the hazelnut biscuits I bake very much. As neighbors, of course we have contacts. I once asked Mr. Xia to do a divination for me. Oh my god, Mr. Xia's divination very efficacious, not inferior to anyone at all. He said that I wanted to lose something, but 2 days after the divination with me, I lost my things. Mrs. Margaret talked non-stop in front of several reporters, speaking with a lively expression. Several reporters quickly recorded something in front of her. Also, the cat in my house was lost last time. Mr. Xia knew it through divination. Where is the cat? When Xia Pinggan's carriage stopped and Xia Pinggan got out of the car, everyone waiting at the door of the villa and on the street next to it suddenly gathered around. The reporters who had originally surrounded Mrs. Margaret suddenly leaving Mrs. Margaret behind, everyone rushed to Xia Pinggan's side. Mr. Xia, what is your response to the challenge issued to you by Andrea, who is known as the genius royal summoner of the Ceylon Empire? Mr. Xia, have you ever met Andrea, the genius royal summoner of the Ceylon Empire? Mr. Xia, what do you want to say to Andrea? Are you ready to just admit defeat? The reporters were all talking, and Xia Pinggan was a little confused when asking questions. Xia Pinggan calmly asked a reporter next to him, and then he learned that just half an hour ago, that is, this afternoon, the Consulate General of the Empire of Ceylon in Kaland held a press reception, and at the reception, the Consul General of the Ceylon Empire did not know whether he let it slip or something, but revealed to the reporters present a piece of exciting news that made all the reporters feel their blood rushing to their heads. Andrea, who is known as the genius royal summoner of the Ceylon Empire, recently arriving at Korland, the summoner representing the Ceylon Empire will challenge Xia Pinggan to a wonderful and fair competition. Compared to the name Xia Pinggan, Andrea is more than 100 times more famous than Xia Pinggan. The current Xia Pinggan is only somewhat famous in the provinces of Korland and Brandy, but the genius royal summoner known as the Ceylon Empire Andrea, however, shines like a superstar, with great fame throughout the Holy Light Alliance and other countries. Those on the street holding pictures and shouting Andrea's name are Andrea's fans in Korland. Is this the consequence of Baron Meyer's death? It took more than 2 months to come. Xia Pinggan felt like a mirror. Facing the reporters, he just shrugged and said, "Every bit of my magical power is precious. If the stakes are high enough, I might consider accepting Andrea's challenge. Thank you, please give me a moment." Hearing what Xia Pinggan said, the reporters were instantly shocked, and countless shocking news headlines were already brewing in their minds. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 934. Mr. Xia, would you like to refuse or accept the challenge? Mr. Xia, do you want to win the boundary pearl through another challenge? What do you want to say to Andrea? Do you feel a lot of pressure? These reporters were relentless, and the reporters responsible for taking photos were creating bursts of flashes of magnesium powder. The white light pierced the eyes of others. Mr. Xia, I am a reporter from Brandy Business Daily. Can I conduct an exclusive interview with you? A young Chinese reporter with black hair and glasses could not squeeze into the core interview circle in front of him. The reporter raised his hand and shouted loudly, but just as he shouted, the reporter's glasses were knocked off by the people next to him. As soon as the reporter lowered his head, several more people squeezed in, and he was completely eliminated. Xia Pinggan did not return to these boring questions because he knew that as long as he opened his mouth, the questions that followed would be endless. This was the specialty of these reporters. Longwu stretched out his arms, with no expression on his face, blocking the reporters like a wall. Xia Pinggan calmly walked into the garden at the entrance of the villa, climbed the steps, and entered the villa. After taking off his coat, the ant in the villa had brought hot tea. Xia Pinggan drank the hot tea and relaxed his nerves. After a while, Longwu, who had set up the carriage, came back. "My lord, those reporters have left." Longwu replied. "I know." Xia Pinggan nodded calmly. The reporters outside the door were probably rushing back to write articles at this moment. According to their usual style of creating hot news, the sentence he just answered may not be available tomorrow. They will interpret various new selling points. Is this another delivery to your door? Xiaopinggan smiled slightly, and his eyes became deep and wise. On the way here, he was thinking about where to go next to get some new boundary beads, and rush to the 11th level as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, the chain reaction of Baron Yes' death came. The operation of the Consulate General of the Ceylon Empire was to deliberately make things bigger, and then forced itself to accept the challenge of that Andrea, and that Andrea, absolutely it was a bad person who came here. One of his purposes was to avenge Baron Meyer, and the second purpose was to regain the face that the summoner of the Ceylon Empire lost at the last cocktail party. Since the Consulate General of the Ceylon Empire and that Andrea wanted to compete with him so much, Xiaopinggan planned to follow the trend and see if he could get some more boundary beads from them. Well, the bigger the bet, the better. Let's let this matter go first. After all, my current identity is still Red Rowan Summoner, and I have the official status of the Bureau of Investigation. The Bureau probably doesn't want to see a foreign summoner defeat its own summoner in front of everyone. So this can be fun. Luck is such a terrifying thing. The world is big and the fusion of the world beads is the biggest thing, so there is no delay at all. So after drinking tea, Xiaopinggan entered the study. Longwu followed him to the study and protected Xiaopinggan outside the study. Opening the underground passage in the study, Xiaopinggan came to the secret room. With a wave of his hand, the black Xuanhuan was summoned by Xiaopinggan to protect him in the secret room. Xuanhuan's huge body occupies half of the secret room, which is extremely oppressive. Summoning this Xuanhuan consumes a lot of divine power, but at this moment Xiaopinggan can already afford it. Afterwards, Xiaopinggan took out the water-seeking technique boundary bead he had just obtained, put a drop of blood on it, and then sat down to fuse. In the boundary pearl, as soon as Xiaopinggan opened his eyes, what he saw was a barren hilly area with traces of wind and sand everywhere, and a long army of tens of thousands of people marching on this land. Xiaopinggan's treatment was better. He was sitting on a carriage piled with various packages and supplies. The carriage's wheels were creaking on the ground. He was moving slowly and hard. The soldiers around him were grey-faced and already a little tired. Judging from the style of their clothes and armor, they should be the army of the Han dynasty. There was also a huge Han character on the flag of the cavalry in front of the team. The sun above our heads has turned to the west and is about to set. It seems that the team has been marching for a long time. Judging from the surrounding terrain, this should be to the west of the Han dynasty. The specific location is not clear yet. This team is marching and it is not known what military operation it is conducting. Xiaopinggan looked at his hands and the beard on his lips and judged that he should be over 50 years old at the moment. His body was relatively strong and he should have a certain status in the army. He could actually sit leisurely while marching. In the car, the packages on the carriage had a strange and refreshing smell. Xiaopinggan opened a package and saw that what was being pulled on the carriage were all dried and kneaded balls of mugwort. Suddenly, just as Xiaopinggan was sizing up the team, several short horn sounds came from the team. Hearing the short horn sounds, the long snake-like team suddenly stopped, and many of them stopped. The soldier was so tired that he sat down on the ground. The general has ordered that the army rest on the spot for 2/4 of an hour. A Han dynasty cavalry on horseback came flying in. When it rushed in front of Xiaopinggan, the cavalry on the horse stopped for a moment, and the horse stood up with its front hooves. Showing his superb riding skills, the general asked Medical Officer Guo to quickly find a nearby water source and dig a well so that the army can camp and rest. Yes, Xiaopinggan quickly jumped off the carriage to take the order. This water-seeking technique was indeed one of the professional skills of ancient Chinese army doctors. This army must camp where there is water, and Xiaopinggan's duty is to quickly find a place with water underground in the nearby desolate land while the army is resting. This task would be daunting for any other person, but for many military doctors in ancient China, this was just daily life. The sergeants next to the carriage were all Xiaopinggan's assistants. Xiaopinggan got off the carriage, stood on a nearby mound more than 10 meters above the ground, looked around, and then asked a few of his men to. He took out a large pile of mugwort from the carriage and piled it on the ground in a leeward depression and lit it. The lit mugwort was kneaded into fine pieces and did not burn violently. Instead, it glowed red and burned slowly like lit smoke, and the light smoke of the mugwort also appeared immediately. More than 10 minutes later, the piles of mugwort had burned into a pile of grey-white ashes. Xiaopinggan stood on a high place and looked at the surrounding wilderness. Suddenly, at a place 1,000 meters away, there was something underground. A wisp of smoke emerged from the ground. It is as expected. Xiaopinggan asked several of his men to mount their horses and quickly took the tools to dig into the smoking area underground. Sure enough, just after digging a few feet underground, the gurgling water emerged from the ground. Looking at the water emerging from the ground, Xiaopinggan laughed. The wisdom of the Chinese ancestors was so wonderful. Mugwort leaves are a yang thing and can cure diseases. The smoke produced after burning moxa leaves also has yang properties, while the water in the ground is yin. If you pile up moxa leaves and burn them, the smoke will flow along the ground. Find a place with water. Having found the water source, the army immediately came to camp near the water source and buried pots for cooking. The world of this world bead was immediately shattered. In the secret room, Xiaopinggan opened his eyes and smiled slightly. This water-seeking boundary bead increased the upper limit of divine power by 31 points, and also allowed him to master another water-seeking spell. With another boundary bead, he would be able to use it again. A new divine bone has been added to advance to the 10th level of the 4-star God's favored one. When Xiaopinggan came out of the secret room after merging the world beads, the doorbell of the villa rang, and Helena's carriage had stopped outside the villa. Helena came in a hurry. "I just learned about your matter. The consulate general of the Ceylon Empire went too far. They are forcing you to fight with others. I just received the news that Baron Meyer died not long after returning to the Ceylon Empire." In the study, Helena was talking to Xiaopinggan about the seriousness of this matter, with an annoyed expression on her face. The specific cause of Baron Meyer's death is unknown. Baron Meyer's family has not announced the cause to the outside world. It is speculated by the outside world that it may be that after Baron Meyer failed with you, he wanted to quickly improve his strength. As a result, he failed to fuse the world pearl and died with a headshot. And Baron Meyer's family has great power in the Ceylon Empire. Their family has already taken Baron Meyer away. The cause of death is angry at you, and Andrea is here to take revenge on you. This is not an ordinary contest, but a duel between summoners. "Oh, I know," Xiaopinggan acted very calmly. Xiaopinggan was actually a little touched that Helena could arrive so quickly. Seeing that Xiaopinggan didn't seem worried at all, Helena was so anxious that she almost pounced on Xiaopinggan and bit Xiaopinggan hard on the face. "You haven't understood the seriousness of the matter. That Andrea is not an ordinary person. Summoners, in the Ceylon Empire, only the most outstanding and talented few summoners are qualified to put the word royal before their titles and become advisors and bodyguards to the royal family of the Ceylon Empire, and that Andrea also participated. He has fought against the Dark Alliance and has made countless outstanding achievements. He is already a 7th level summoner. He comes to compete with you this time because he wants to kill you in the contest. The Consulate General of the Ceylon Empire is now building momentum to force you to do nothing. If you don't accept Andrea's challenge, then I will kill you in an honest and fair manner. I've been targeted by them now, so what do you think I should do now?" Xiaopinggan asked with a smile, spreading his hands. Helena stared at Xiaopinggan's face, showing the powerful side of a strong woman. "I have already thought about it. After leaving here, I will go to Aliuri, and he will come forward to coordinate with the Investigation Bureau and let the Investigation Bureau appoint you. A special mission, temporarily leaving Kullander, and then announcing to the outside world that because you are performing a special mission from the Bureau of Investigation, you cannot compete with Andrea. This reason makes sense. Andrea cannot stay for a long time. Kullander, if you come back after he leaves, avoiding the confrontation may cause some damage to your reputation in the short term, but as time goes by, everyone will forget that this is the safest and most honorable way. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 935. Seeing Helena's anxious look, Xiaopinggan found it interesting. After working with this woman for so long, although the cooperation between the two was based on a win-win situation, as the cooperation lasted for a long time, the relationship between the two became like a friend. The method you mentioned is indeed sound. However, I have a question. Since Andrea is already a 7th level summoner and is so much stronger than me, I can naturally refuse his challenge. What I'm curious about now is there any way they can force me to accept such an ill-intentioned contest? Xiaopinggan asked curiously. Don't you know that the most dangerous duel between summoners is the death roulette? Helena asked, glaring at Xiaopinggan. Xiaopinggan blinked. What did you say, death roulette? Of course, this is how summoners of different levels compete. Helena's face showed a look of recollection. I have seen it once before in Andalaya. The death roulette for ordinary people is to install a revolver inside a bullet, and then shot himself in the head with a pistol, and the summoner's death roulette is the two summoners dueling, in a special spell barrier, turning a circle with various boundary beads the roulette wheel, and then fuse the world beads that rolled in front of him on the roulette wheel without the spiritual mind crystal. The danger of those world beads is very high. Once the fusion fails, there is a high probability that the head will explode, just like to himself it's like being shot in the head. Helena took a deep breath and explained patiently, because the summoner's death roulette game seems fair to every summoner. What everyone competes with is luck and their own abilities. Therefore, the death roulette game is often used in duels between summoners of different levels. What Andrea wants to challenge you must be the death roulette game. What? Such a good thing. Xiaopinggan blinked his eyes, fighting himself in this way. Wasn't this a fight with a meat bun? Bah, wasn't it clear that he was giving himself a boundary bead? Ahem, even if this is the case, I may not lose. Although his level is high, he may not be more confident than me when it comes to integrating the world pearl. Xiaopinggan became serious. Helena went a little crazy. She rushed over, grabbed Xiaopinggan's shoulders with both hands, and shook Xiaopinggan hard. You bastard, you usually look very smart, how come you have become stupid now? Ceylon Empire, the royal library contains the notes of many powerful summoners, classics, and the experience summed up by integrating various world beads in the past. Andrea's privilege as a royal summoner is to be able to enter the royal library and browse those precious summoners. Classics. Every royal summoner of the Ceylon Empire can enter the royal library to study as a royal scholar for 3 years after being granted the title. Even if he does not have the divine mind crystal, his success rate in fusing those dangerous world beads must be higher than yours. Gao, do you understand? Because of the vigorous shaking, Helena's face turned red and excited, and her hair was a little messy. After Helena calmed down, Xiaopinggan put his hands on Helena's shoulders and asked Helena to calm down. Looking at Helena, he said calmly, "Don't worry, I cherish my little life more than anyone else. If you want to help me now, you can do one thing for me." What's the matter? Helena took a deep breath. The media from Kaland and Brandy will probably want to hype this up, so you can help add fuel to the fire and make this bigger. Of course, the focus of the media's public opinion guidance is not on Andre and Ayasia's personal duel. This is not a personal grudge, but a duel between the summoners of the Ceylon Empire and the summoners of the Red Rhone Republic. I personally have nothing to do with it, but I represent the summoners of the Red Rhone Republic and the summoners of the Red Rhone Republic. The honor of the Investigation Bureau, if I lose, it will be equivalent to the summoner of the Red Roan Republic losing to the summoner of the Ceylon Empire, do you understand? Helena looked at Xiaoping's deep and calm eyes, and opened her mouth in slight shock. For the first time, Helena found that she could not see through this man, who was always so unexpected. What do you want to do? Helena lowered her voice a little. You are playing with fire. What don't you want to do? Xiaoping smiled and removed his hand from Helena's shoulder. I am also a formal employee of the Investigation Bureau. Among Brandy's summoners, I can be considered a celebrity. For such a challenge, the Bureau of Investigation and Red Rowan will always give me some support, are you right? Otherwise, if I lose in the duel, everyone's faces will not look good, are you right? Helena still frowned, but the Bureau of Investigation has no way to improve your success rate in this kind of duel. There is no national-level database in Red Roan that can compete with the Royal Library of the Ceylon Empire. The important information notes of our domestic summoners are all in the hands of various families, and it is impossible for those families to show you the things they have collected. Xiaoping shook his head. I don't need that information. The Investigation Bureau should have a lot of world beads and spiritual crystals. My purpose is very simple. If the Investigation Bureau can give me some world beads and spiritual crystals, it will be enough for me to raise my strength to another level before facing off against Andrea. This shouldn't be difficult for the Bureau of Investigation, and at least it shows their support for me. World Pearl again. Helena put her hand on her forehead and looked at Xiaoping speechlessly. She didn't understand why the man in front of her would take such a desperate risk. Is it really worth it for a few world pearls? If you do this, you will kill yourself. If you take the boundary bead from the Investigation Bureau, you will no longer have a reason to evade. If you really want the boundary bead and the divine sense crystal, wait until you get to the capital area. I can get a lot of your detoxification skills, and it's not dangerous at all. You can get everything you want. The prospect Helena painted is very good, but for Xiaoping, time is the biggest variable. Xiaoping really doesn't know if he will be able to stand here again in a few months. In recent times, with the increase in strength, Xiaoping had a vague premonition of crisis. The Demon Lord already knew that he had awakened and that the Demon Lord's ultimate move was coming. The reason why he is so leisurely now is because the dominant demon god has not locked his position in the huge galaxy cluster of the gods in just a few months, and this situation cannot last for long. If the Demon Lord takes action again this time, he will definitely learn from experience and will never be as simple as issuing a fatwa like he did in Yuankai world before, because he knows that he has the ability to evade his fatwa. Only Xiaoping can feel the sense of danger of being closely watched and hunted by the biggest villain boss in the universe, making Xiaoping always walking on thin ice. Therefore, Xiaoping didn't want to wait. He would never wait until tomorrow for something he could grab in front of him. I have my reasons. If you really want to help me and want me to survive better in future crises, this is the greatest help to me. Helena finally understood Xiaoping's determination and what she wanted. Her brows gradually relaxed and her face became solemn. She nodded. In this case, you have decided, then okay, let's leave the media matters to you. Give me. Thanks. This is what I should do. Helena left, and Xiaoping sent Helena to the carriage at the door, and then turned back to the villa. For Xiaoping, what happened this time is really the best illustration of the crisis. When there is a crisis, there is an opportunity. As long as the operation is done well, it will not take a few days for all 99 divine bones in his body to be ready. By then, there is only one last step left before becoming a god: ignite the divine fire of the great avenue to become a god. Once the divine fire is ignited, you can become a god. However, looking at his current situation, even if he becomes a god, it may not be the end, because there will also be wars between gods. When the time comes, the dominant demon god may still not let him go. Damn it, this universe is so vast, with billions of stars in the sky. If it were just for a small earth, the dominant demon wouldn't be staring at me like this. In fact, Xiaoping'an was also quite depressed and still had a lot of puzzles. More than half an hour after Helena left, another carriage stopped at Xiaoping'an's door. This time, it was Mrs. Caitlin who got off the carriage. Mrs. Caitlin, who was wearing a snow-white mink fur, looked anxious. She had just entered the villa and took out a wallet inlaid with gold and rubies and handed it directly to Xiaoping'an. I heard that 11 the summoner of the Lan Empire wants to kill you. Here is a bank check of 500,000 thalers. You should leave Courland and hide for a while. With this money, you can use it to buy what you want, the G-bead. Any spiritual crystal can be used. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 936. The honorable showdown between the Ceylon Empire and the talented summoner Redron is about to begin. Brandy Bureau's rookie is about to be defeated. Andrea said that no one among Redron's young summoners is his opponent. This is the battle of honor to defend the summoners of Redron. Xiaoping'an cannot be defeated by Andrea. The next morning, while Xiaoping'an was eating breakfast and looking at the eye-catching headlines on the front pages of the pile of newspapers that Longwu bought for him, he couldn't help but smile. Helena's work was really neat and reassuring. It only took one night. As soon as the news came out in these newspapers, Xiaoping'an felt that he had already succeeded halfway. In such a duel, if he really failed, what would happen to Brand? Many people in Di province lost their dignity. This was a battle of honor between Brandy and Red Rowan. Because Red Rowan is an ally with the Ceylon Empire, it is very challenging to grasp the proportion of these reports so that people who read the newspapers will have the idea of defending the country's honor without affecting the relationship between the two countries. The level of the traitor behind it is too high. There is still no news about Mr. Coin's mission in the Brandy Daily, so today is like a holiday for Xiaoping'an, and he arranges all the time. He promised to accompany Mrs. Caitlin back to the manor today. Of course, Xiaoping'an didn't ask for Mrs. Caitlin's money. Xiaoping'an now still has nearly 100,000 thalers. To exchange these money for world beads and spiritual crystals, it takes a chance. Those things are not goods placed in the store. You can buy it if you have money. The villa in Mrs. Caitlin's manor has been renovated and new guards have been hired. Mrs. Caitlin has not returned to the manor during this period. She planned to go back today, but she was a little worried, so she invited Xiaoping'an go visit the manor with her, spend the weekend, fish and hunt. Before the breakfast on the table was finished, Xiaoping'an heard the noise coming from outside the street. Xiaoping'an just had a thought and saw a group of people coming from nowhere on the street outside his villa. There were about 40 people, both men and women. They were wearing cotton-padded clothes and holding signs. They stood in an orderly manner on the human-shaped path behind the flower bed on the roadside, shouting slogans and holding signs in their hands. The sign is similar to the slogan they shouted. Xiaoping'an, come on, come on. The honor of the summoner of Red Roan shall not be violated. Red Roan will win. The defenders of Brandy Summoner's honor will not fail. Brandy is not the back garden of the royal summoner of the Ceylon Empire. These people were, arranged by Helena. Xiaoping'an was slightly startled. Don't tell me, after doing this, he felt that his momentum suddenly came out. He really felt like the honor of fighting for Red Rowan. While those people were holding signs and shouting slogans, several reporters had already appeared outside and started taking photos and interviewing a few people holding signs. This kind of momentum immediately attracted the attention of people passing by. Yes, this job can be arranged well. After breakfast, Xiaoping'an went out. Longwu's carriage was ready and waiting outside. Those who were holding signs and shouting slogans saw Xiaoping'an coming out of the villa. Many people cheered directly, as if they were seeing the emperor and superstar. They were very excited. Xiaopinggan waved to those people and said nothing. Just asked the aunt at home to deliver some ginger candies, hot water and biscuits to those people on time to prevent those people from fainting, and then got on the carriage. Xiaopinggan's carriage first arrived at Mrs. Caitlin's villa on Odin Street to meet Mrs. Caitlin, and then went to the manor together. After arriving at the villa, Xiaopinggan discovered that Caitlin also invited Helena, so the three of them, 3 cars the carriage drove towards Mrs. Caitlin's manor outside the city. Mrs. Caitlin and Helena both ran to Xiaopinggan's carriage. The 3 of them crowded together. The entire carriage was filled with the smell of the 2 women's high-end perfume. I met Aliali last night, and Aliali already knows about this. The charming Helena was in the car with a lazy look on her face. This kind of duel between summoners is still private in the final analysis. Yes, it is inconvenient for the governor's palace to intervene, but I can see that Aliali doesn't want to see you lose either. This morning, after the news came out in the newspaper, Aliali had already asked his secretary to go to the Bureau of Investigation to understand the situation. So soon, there will be feedback from the Investigation Bureau. Thank you, Xiaopinggan said sincerely. Without this woman, he would not have advanced so quickly in the past few months. I don't know why you insisting on such a dangerous contest. Is it because of the man's self-esteem? Mrs. Caitlin shook her head in confusion and sighed. Men are all weird arrogance, Helena said. The 2 women looked at each other and nodded, feeling very consistent. I have my own reasons for insisting on nature. You may know it later. In order to express my gratitude to the 2 beautiful and lovely ladies, I will cook in person at the manor this time so that you can taste my craftsmanship and authentic food. Chinese food, Xiaopinggan said. Ah, you can also cook. Mrs. Caitlin and Helena looked at each other, both of them were surprised. You don't want to summon a chef, do you? Helena asked immediately. Don't worry, I'll do it myself, Xiaopinggan said confidently. After Xiaopinggan said this, the 2 women immediately became interested and began to change the topic to food and hunting, and the atmosphere in the car became more relaxed. We came to Mrs. Caitlin's manor again. The fields of this manor were the scene after the harvest. The fields were full of piles of wheat straw. Sitting in the carriage, you could see hares scurrying around in the fields. The main building of the manor's villa has been completely renovated, with a completely new look inside and out, and no trace of the previous one can be seen. The new housekeeper of the manor and a group of servants were waiting in the manor to welcome Mrs. Caitlin's arrival. After having lunch at the manor, Xiaopinggan, Mrs. Caitlin and Helena each changed into hunting clothes, put on boots, hunting hats and held shotguns, all looking heroic. Herman and several followers from the manor took hunting tools and hunting dogs, and then the group left the manor on horseback. It was not until this time that Xiaopinggan discovered that in this world, hunting and fishing are also hobbies that many upper-class women can participate in. For Caitlin and Helena, they even have smaller calibers and smaller recoil specially made for women. Shotgun. The messenger in green flew happily in the sky. The black dragon and the dog took the lead, chasing a few hares in the hills. The other hunting dogs followed the black dragon. Mrs. Caitlin and Helena rode horses and followed Xiaopinggan. All around me, there was laughter and laughter all the way. An hour later, Xiaopinggan, who was riding on the horse, frowned slightly. At this moment, a group of people were in a wild valley, resting by a river. Herman and the others were handling several prey they had caught. Helena was in high spirits and was preparing to fish here, but Xiaopinggan felt like she was being spied on. The perception ability of the 10th level summoner is very terrifying, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Xiaopinggan remained calm, but as soon as his thoughts changed, the god of fortune boy appeared beside him. After 2 breaths, the boy of fortune god locked his target. In a pine forest on a hilltop more than 3,000 meters away, a gray-black wild wolf was hiding behind a bush, sticking out his tongue and watching everything in the valley with a pair of red evil eyes. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 937. It was dark at night, and Mrs. Caitlin's manor had become quiet early. The servants and farmers in the manor had already fallen asleep. It was silent and dark inside and outside the manor. Because of the cold weather outside, even the chirping of insects could be heard. Even the hunting dogs guarding the manor were huddled in their dens. Today's dinner was cooked by Xiaopingan himself, making a table of Chinese delicacies for Mrs. Caitlin and Helena to feast on. After the meal, Mrs. Caitlin and Helena took off their shoes, barefooted, and took Xiaopingan to dance in front of the burning fireplace, laughing and drinking. When they were drunk and sleepy, Xiaopingan took the two of them. After being sent to their respective rooms to rest, Xiaopingan also returned to his room, lay down in his clothes and lay quietly on the bed. The sleeping immortal technique is really powerful. This technique only consumes a small amount of divine power and will be activated as soon as you lie down in bed to sleep. It is perfect for summoners. Xiaopingan only slept for 3 hours, but he felt as beautiful as after sleeping for 3 days. My energy reached its peak. In the dark room, Xiaopingan opened his eyes sparkling, and then stood up from the bed. Then, Xiaopingan opened the window of the room, leaving a gap, and his whole figure was shrouded in black mist, and then bang! With a sound, it transformed into a black eagle owl, spread its wings, and flew out of the window silently, disappearing into the night. If there are any divine favored ones and summoners here, they will definitely scream when they see Xiaopingan transform into an eagle owl and fly out of the window, because in this world, there are only summoners above level 8 who have more than 63 divine bones. Only after completing the piece can you transform into a bird and enjoy the freedom of soaring in the sky. In this world, the summoner's flying technique cannot fly, but the powerful summoner's incarnation technique allows the few people standing on the summoner's power pyramid to enjoy the freedom given by the sky in another way. A wild wolf wanders in the darkness. This wild wolf spent the whole night like a nail, patiently lurking in a pine forest, staring at the villa of Lady Caitlin's manor a few miles away, until all the lights reflected in the windows of the villa were completely extinguished. And so on for a few more hours. The earth became silent, the moonlight in the sky was completely obscured by clouds, and the cold air of winter began to pour out from the darkness, causing the pine needles on the ground in the pine forest to be stained with a layer of frost. The wild wolf finally moved. The wild wolf's blood-red eyes were fixed on Lady Caitlin's castle, its scarlet tongue licking its lips. It moved quickly and decisively, like an assassin lurking in the darkness, quickly passed through the pine forest, and then disappeared in the shadow of the hills beyond the pine forest. A few minutes later, the wild wolf emerged from the shadow of the hills. After passing through a long bush, the wild wolf had approached the river outside Mrs. Caitlin's manor. There was a piece of withered yellow reeds beside the river. From then on, the wild wolf submerged into the reeds. When it emerged from the reeds again, the farmland piled with wheat straw appeared in front of it. This is the edge area of Mrs. Caitlin's estate, only more than 1,000 meters away from the villa. The wild wolf seemed to be very familiar with everything about the manor. It jumped into a dry field ridge covered by vines and crawled. When it was about to approach Lady Caitlin's manor, suddenly, the wild wolf stopped. He stood up, his eyes shrank suddenly, all the hair on his body exploded, his fangs were exposed, and a low growl came from his throat. A black figure stood quietly in front of him, with a smile on his face, looking at the wild wolf. The visibility here was very low, and the hazy moonlight was blocked by the clouds, but even so, the wild wolf could still see the black figure clearly. He has a face, a young and tall figure, wearing a black coat, black hair, black eyes, and a sarcastic smile at the corner of his mouth. This person is none other than Xiaopingan. Xiaopingan looked at the wild wolf and smiled slightly. George the Skinned Butcher, long time no see. You are indeed very courageous. When everyone thought you would escape from Courland, no one could have imagined, you are still lurking here, you are able to run rampant for so long, you do have an extraordinary side. Xiaopingan, the wolf actually spoke. As the wolf said Xiaopingan's name, the wolf's figure was like a ball of puffed matter thrown into the oven. Under the shroud of black mist, amidst the rattling sound of bones that made people feel teeth, it gradually turned into the appearance of a person. This person had an ugly face, red eyes, and exuded the aura of a beast. The eyes of hatred were fixed on Xiaopingan. It was George, the Skinned Butcher, who escaped from here and was wanted by the Investigation Bureau. George, who was reincarnated as a human, quickly moved his eyes, scanning the surrounding environment to see if there were any other ambushes or summoners here. When he found that Xiaopingan was the only one here, his face was filled with anger. His expression gradually became ferocious. Those two women are mine, George smiled evilly, licking his lips. No one can save you tonight. Everyone in the manor will die, and I will do it in front of them. I will peel off your skin, have a bloody feast, and let them kneel in front of me like a prostitute. This is the price for offending me. Xiaopingan shook his head gently. You are such a rubbish that is really hopeless. Hey, it's too late to say anything, pretty boy, go to hell. George's voice condensed, and with his hand, dozens of ice picks that were as black as ink and exuded a cold aura appeared on Xiaopingan's body. Around the body, like arrows, they blasted towards Xiaopingan, leaving no way for Xiaopingan to retreat. At the moment when the spell was blasted, George also kicked hard on the ground with his hands and feet like a wolf, and his whole body turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Xiaopingan. But the next moment, George was stunned, because he saw Xiaopingan just raised his hands slightly, and all the ice picks that hit Xiaopingan were suspended in front of Xiaopingan, motionless, as if they were frozen. Then, like quicksand, those ice cones all turned into fine debris and scattered from the air. Impossible! George screamed, his face turned pale. He is a 4th-level summoner, and he can easily resolve his powerful spell bombardment, unless... Suddenly, George seemed to understand something. Without even thinking about it, he turned around fiercely, like a frightened lost dog. Wrapped in a mass of black mist, his whole body was like an arrow, pointing behind him. He quickly ran through the darkness without even touching the ground, as if running for his life. A mocking smile appeared on the corner of Xiaopingan's mouth, and he just moved slightly towards George. George, who had already jumped 50 meters away in an instant, had just landed on one foot. A halo of light drawn on the ground as a prison lit up, and the soil on the ground, like a big hand, grabbed George at once. The soil turned into prison shackles and appeared on George, locking George. George screamed. He was instantly frozen in place, like dust caught in superglue, unable to move again. It is also a technique of drawing the ground to create a prison. The effect Xiaopingan is exerting at this moment is completely different from the effect he exerted in his first battle with George that day. At that time, George was still able to break free under Xiaopingan's technique of drawing the ground as a prison, but at this moment, George was like a salted fish on the chopping board under the same technique. George was trapped by the magic of drawing the ground as a prison. He could not move his hands and feet, and could not turn his neck. His divine power was completely imprisoned. Even the sound in his throat seemed to be locked by the lock around his neck. He could not make a sound. Without making any sound, he could only watch in horror as Xiaopingan calmly walked up to him. Xiaopingan came to 2 meters away from Georg and suddenly stopped. The stench on Geog's body made him frown. Damn it, this guy hasn't bathed in months. It's dirtier than a beast. Xiaopingan was too lazy to talk nonsense. He stamped his foot, and a faint light lit up in the magic circle that was drawn as a prison. George, who was still opening his eyes, completely turned into a huge ice lump and solidified. Finally, the stench disappeared and was directly physically isolated by Xiaopinggan. As for garbage like George, there is no need to live, but this guy's body is still useful. You can go to the investigation bureau to collect the reward in exchange for a few world beads. Xiaopingyan didn't waste any more words. He waved his hand and put away the huge ice lump. Then he turned around and transformed into an eagle owl, flying up and disappearing into the darkness in the blink of an eye. In the silent darkness, it was as if nothing had happened. The eagle owl flew back from the gap in the window and silently transformed into a human form again. Then, Xiaopingyan showed a surprised expression on his face. The vitality of George in the ice mass in his secret mandala has been extinct, but a boundary bead exploded from the space equipment on George. Xiaopingyan moved his hand, and the world bead exploded by George appeared in Xiaopingyan's hand. It was a golden world bead. The whole world bead flashed with a gorgeous shimmer. The world beads in the dim light, you can faintly see a magnificent palace hidden in the clouds and mist in the world bead. It is filled with fairy spirit. It looks like this world bead is extraordinary. As soon as Xiaopingyan's hand touched the world bead, a line of golden font appeared in the world bead, Tei Jinhu a purpose. I go. Xiaopingyan was shocked by this world bead. No wonder George couldn't fuse this world bead, because this world bead is the secret inheritance left by Lu Dongbin, the founder of the Taoist Danding sect with the help of Fuji. The treasure of civilization. Jung obtained this book and translated it into The Secret of the Golden Flower, which caused a sensation throughout Europe. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 938. As if nothing had happened, everything was as usual in the manner the next morning. In the morning it was time for horseback riding, walking and fishing. At noon, after lunch, this weekend's trip to the manor was over. Mrs. Caitlin was very satisfied with everything in the manor, and the three of them took the carriage back to Courland. After coming to Courland, Xiaopingyan asked Longwu to buy a copy of Brandy Daily on the street. The showdown between him and Andrea is now being heated up by various newspapers. Today's Brandy Daily still left a huge space for this matter at the bottom of the first page. Brandy Daily cleverly reported that Xiaopingyan defeated Baron Meyer at the last cocktail party at Fort Condra. There is no lack of praise for Xiaopingyan, the genius summoner who defended the honor of the summoner of the Red Rhone Republic. As for Andrea's challenge against Xiaopingyan this time, although the wording of this report is quite euphemistic, anyone who reads this report will probably have an idea in their mind, the summoner of the Ceylon Empire. The reason he came to Courland to challenge Xiaopingyan was to take revenge, and to once again prove that the summoners of the Ceylon Empire were stronger than the summoners of the Red Rhone Republic. This is no longer a simple contest between two people, but an issue related to the honor of the summoners of the two countries. This report also focused on Andrea's strength and past achievements and honors. In comparison, Xiaopingyan in the report was much pitiful. No matter how talented he was, he in the report was just as soon to be a summoner who has advanced to the 3rd level, but his opponent is a strong man who has been famous for a long time in the 7th level. Sitting in the carriage, reading the newspaper in his hand, Xiaopingyan's fingers gently tapped the armrest next to him, with a smile on his face. The current public opinion is exactly what he needs and is very beneficial to him. If in this kind of situation under the circumstances, the Bureau of Investigation has not given him any indication. If he really loses, some people in the Bureau may take the blame. Then he turned to the advertising page at the back of Brandy Daily. As expected, Xiaopingyan saw the message from Mr. Coin asking him to meet this afternoon. At the right time, Xiaopingyan directly asked Longwu to drive the carriage to the Domination Temple. Today is the weekend, and there are many people in the Lord's Temple, especially outside the confession room. Many people are queuing up. Xiaopingyan is also at the back of the queue. It took more than half an hour before it was his turn to enter a confession room. After waiting in the confession room for a minute, Someone from the opposite room came in. Then, through the narrow window in the confession room, Xiaopinggan heard the familiar and calm voice of Mr. Coin from the opposite side. You came. Yes, sir, Andrea, this incident was completely beyond my expectation. I was surrounded by reporters as soon as I returned to my residence yesterday. It was from the reporters that I learned about the news from the Consulate General of the Empire of Ceylon. News? Xiaopinggan's voice was full of disguised grievance. Sir, don't you think the Consulate General of the Empire of Ceylon is making a fuss? I just defeated Baron Meyer at the reception. This matter is not your fault. Baron Meyer may be dead, Mr. Coin said calmly. Ah, what, dead, how is that possible? Xiaopinggan asked in shock. The investigation bureau doesn't know the specific situation, but Andrea's visit this time is supported by Baron Meyer's family. Mr. Coin's voice paused. The investigation bureau wants to know about you. With your opinions and wishes, do you dare to accept Andrea's challenge? From a personal point of view, I don't want to challenge a strong person like Andrea. Andrea is much stronger than me. Sir, you should know that this challenge will be very dangerous, but as a member of the investigation bureau, as a member, I obey the arrangements of the Bureau of Investigation, and in order to defend the honor of Summoner Red Roan and the Bureau of Investigation, I will not back down no matter how dangerous it is. Xiaopinggan's tone was a little impassioned, but he kicked the ball back because he knew that at this time, the Bureau of Investigation would not let him be a coward. If he backed down, the conflict would be concentrated in the Bureau of Investigation. Those big shots in the Investigation Bureau, no matter for their reputation or future, would never allow themselves to withstand the accusations of public opinion and the pressure from above in order to preserve Xiaopinggan. Therefore, letting Xiaopinggan accept the challenge is the only choice for the Investigation Bureau. Mr. Coin suddenly sighed. Andrea is very strong and one of the most potential summoners in the Ceylon Empire. He is likely to advance to the 9th level in the future. This time he accepted the invitation from the Baron Meyer family. Commission, you come with the belief that you will win. If you avoid the battle this time, the Investigation Bureau will be under tremendous pressure, and it will also have a lot of negative impact on public opinion. Therefore, the Investigation Bureau supports your acceptance of Andrea from today onwards. You should concentrate on preparing for the challenge, and you can put aside the task of the night watchman for now. Yes, Xiaopinggan responded obediently, and then said nothing more. He was waiting for Mr. Coin's next words. Really? Do you have any request? Can the Investigation Bureau coordinate with the big families in Red Roan to lend me the notes of their summoners' fusion world beads? Sir, you should know that this showdown between Andrea and I will be very difficult. It's most likely the death roulette, Xiaopinggan said loudly. Impossible, Mr. Coin refused without thinking. Then, he seemed to feel that he refused too quickly, and then softened his tone. The Investigation Bureau does not have such great authority, and Red Rowan's it is impossible for those families to agree that the notes and information about the Summoner Fusion World Pearl collected by various families and snobbery are the most precious properties of those families, and they cannot share them. That's such a pity, Xiaopinggan sighed. In this case, can the Investigation Bureau try to give me as many world beads and spiritual crystals as possible? I want to let my own before accepting Andrea's challenge. Advance and upgrade it to 2 or 3 levels at will. Just raise 2 or 3 levels. With Mr. Coin's calmness, he couldn't help but his eyes twitched when he heard Xiaopinggan's request. He almost couldn't help but want to throw a thunderbolt into the confession room where Xiaopinggan was. According to the consensus of the Blessed Ones, on average, at least 30 world beads and 30 corresponding spiritual crystals are needed to upgrade a level. This is not a small amount of resources, not to mention 2 or 3 levels, which requires 610 to 90 world beads and spiritual crystals. Thank you for your courage to speak. Mr. Coin took a few deep breaths and calmed down his mood again. Ahem. The Bureau of Investigation cannot meet the resources you need. the Bureau's resource gap is huge. Boundary pearls and divine sense crystals have always been with scarce resources. The Investigation Bureau can only give you a certain amount of support and encouragement, but it is impossible for you to rise 2 or 3 levels. Then, it's okay to upgrade the resources by 1 level. I want 30 world beads. It doesn't matter if some of the world beads don't have divine mind crystals. I've saved a lot of money here. I can try to obtain divine beads from other channels. Read the crystal. Xiaopingan even had a tragic expression on his face. The Investigation Bureau can only give you a maximum of 25 world beads. 20 of them have spiritual thoughts crystals, and the other 5 do not have spiritual thoughts crystals. However, failure of the fusion will not be fatal. This is what the Investigation Bureau can give you. Your greatest support. Xiaopingan was so excited when he heard this. With these boundary beads from the Investigation Bureau, he could steadily advance to the 11th level. If he wanted to get these rewards from the Investigation Bureau, he didn't know how much credit he would have to make. And now that the situation has arrived, it suddenly becomes easier to obtain these world beads. Can the Investigation Bureau give me a list and let me choose those boundary beads with spiritual mind crystals? There are 40 world beads in this list. You can choose 20 from it. Mr. Coin was already prepared. As he spoke, he handed over a piece of information from the narrow window. That information inside, there are miniature photos of 40 boundary beads, allowing Xiaopingan to choose freely. Xiaopingan knew that this should be the highest treatment he could get from the Investigation Bureau. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 939. The Investigation Bureau's consideration was indeed thoughtful, because Xiaopingan had actually integrated many of the boundary beads in the information handed over by Mr. Coin. Sure enough, the secret of the Summoner secret mandala, no matter which world it is in, is an area that outsiders cannot touch. The Bureau of Investigation does not ask what world beads it has fused, but will only provide it with the world beads it wants to fuse. Xiaopingan quickly selected 20 boundary beads among the 40 boundary beads, and then happily handed the information through the narrow window of the confession room. A total of 25 world beads, plus 20 divine mind crystals, for me, are actually equivalent to more than 40 world beads. Xiaopingan seemed to have seen his 99 divine bones condensed and advanced to the first level of perfection. These world beads will be delivered to me tomorrow morning. Just come and pick them up then. Mr. Coin took a look at the information and said. Thank you, Xiaopingan said modestly. Regarding the future showdown between Xiaopingan and Andrea, from an intellectual point of view, Mr. Coin is not optimistic about Xiaopingan, because Mr. Coin knows very well what kind of background the royal summoner of the Ceylon Empire has, but emotionally, he still hopes that Xiaopingan can win. This is what the so-called common enemies are. As Red Roan summoner and Xiaopingan superior, he really doesn't want to see a summoner from the Ceylon Empire showing off his power in Coreland. Are there any other requirements? Mr. Coin just asked casually. Today's joints have been completed and he is actually ready to leave. The boundary beads that Xiaopingan needs will be allocated by the Investigation Bureau after he submits them. Well, I have a small request. Mr. Coin didn't expect that Xiaopingan really had other requests. He was about to stand up and sat still. Oh, tell me. Ahem, this request is actually nothing. I hope that the Investigation Bureau can let out some news and say that it actually does not want or support me to accept Andrea's challenge, Xiaopingan said with a smile. Hearing Xiaopingan's words, Mr. Coin was slightly startled, but as soon as his thoughts changed, he knew what Xiaopingan was probably trying to do again. This guy usually seemed quite honest, but at critical moments, he always felt that people are elusive. What do you want to do? Asked Mr. Coin. Xiaopingan shrugged. spread his hands, and said innocently, "We can't let the people at the Consulate General of the Ceylon Empire think that Red Roan Summoner can be controlled by them. Now they are eager for me to accept, and it's them, not me, who challenged Drita. If you want to control my future, you have to pay a sufficient price. Understand, this guy probably wants to take advantage of the people at the Consulate General of the Empire of Ceylon in turn. In this regard, Mr. Coin is happy to see the results, because there are many people within the Investigation Bureau who are dissatisfied with the actions of the Consulate General of the Ceylon Empire at this moment, just because the allies and diplomatic relations between the two sides are inconvenient and too targeted. If Ceylon can be, many people in the Investigation Bureau must be happy to see those guys at the Imperial Consulate General pay a small price. Okay, leave this to me. Thank you, sir. Xiaopingan stood up, put his hand on his chest, and bowed solemnly to Mr. Coin. These days, thank you, sir, for taking care of me. I was able to become a night watchman and protect the city in a short period of time. The tranquility of the night is my pleasure. Xiaopingan had never saluted Mr. Coin so solemnly before, which made Mr. Coin feel like Xiaopingan was explaining his funeral affairs. Mr. Coin also stood up, sighed slightly, and after 2 seconds of silence, he said something profound. For a person blessed by God, between honor and life, there is no choice. Miscalculation, the long river of time can dilute everything. The creed that the night watchman adheres to, actually only has one sentence: although the night is long and seemingly endless, the dawn will always come. After saying that, Mr. Coin left, leaving Xiaopingan in the confession room. Mr. Coin, what does this mean? Is he hinting to himself that he actually doesn't think highly of him, encouraging himself to be weak and avoid this confrontation? This should be his true words. Mr. Coin is actually very good, but I guess there won't be many opportunities for cooperation in the future. Xiaopingan then turned and left the confession room. When he walked out of the Lord's temple, Xiaopingan suddenly understood the reason why the Investigation Bureau only gave him 25 world beads this time. With the support of 25 world beads, and it's not enough to completely upgrade it to a level. This is probably because of concerns about the relationship with the Ceylon Empire, so there is no obvious tit-for-tat support from horses and horses. This is a measure of propriety. But this is enough. Xiaopingan walked down the steps calmly, got on the carriage, and asked Longwu to return to the villa. On the carriage, Xiaopingan took out the Taijinhua purpose world bead again, squinting and rubbing it on his hand, trying to fuse this world bead. He really had no clue that he was going to incarnate. Lu Dongbin still wants to be transformed into a person who can communicate with higher dimensions. This purpose of Taijinhua is infinitely mysterious and points directly to the Great Road. He has studied it carefully in his previous life. This book is one of the Taoist classics that Xiaopingan has studied. It is the most detailed book on the steps of cultivating an immortal, every word of which is very detailed. However, even if the secret book is in front of it, without the extraordinary qualifications and the guidance of a famous teacher, it is not easy to become an immortal and follow in the footsteps of Lu Ziyu. The carriage soon returned to number 169 Binhu Street. Compared with yesterday, there were 20 or 30 more supporters holding signs in support of Xiaopingan here today, making the street quite lively. Some people looked like they were bringing their families here to support. Judging from the enthusiasm of these people, their appearance fee should be quite high, but for Helena, this is just a small amount of money. The nearby police station also sent 2 policemen to maintain order here. When Xiaopingan got off the carriage, the entrustees cheered, feeling like they were welcoming an emperor and a superstar. Xiaopingan calmly got out of the carriage and waved to those people, who then let out a huge cheer. After returning to the villa with the Black Dragon, Xiaopingan did not waste time and directly asked Longwu to guard the study. He himself had entered the underground secret room, summoned Xuanhuan to protect him, and prepared to fuse the Taijinhua purpose boundary beads. I wonder what this world bead can do after it is fused. Is it to summon immortals, or can it change the secret mandala like a cultivation map, so that the people in the secret mandala can practice and understand? Looking at the boundary bead in his hand, Xiaopingan said to himself. After recalling the contents of the 13 chapters of Tei Jinhua purpose in his mind, Xiaopingan finally dropped his own blood on the boundary bead after making sure that nothing was missed. The golden cocoon of light immediately surrounded Xiaopingan. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 940. The situation in front of him was very strange. This was the first time Xiaopingan encountered such a situation when fusing the world bead. Xiaopingan discovered that he had no body, but just a pure consciousness. And this consciousness is connected to another consciousness, one is like the vast sea, the other is like a trickling stream. The consciousness connected to his consciousness is in turn connected to a body, and that body has its eyes closed, standing on a huge in front of the wooden plate. The wooden plate is covered with a layer of fine sand. On the sand, a metal circle hangs. In the metal circle, there is a bamboo pen, and above the circle, connected to the circle, is a huge cross-shaped wooden frame. One end of the wooden frame hangs high above the beam in the middle of the room. The lower end falls and is connected to the pen. It can move like a huge mechanical arm made of wood and connected to the bamboo pen. Together, and under the bamboo pen, is the wooden sand table. There were two people standing next to the sand table. One of them was holding one hand on a wooden bar of the sand table, staring solemnly at the body connected to Xiaopingan's consciousness. Another person stood next to another table, holding a pen dipped in ink in his hand and paper in front of him. He also stared seriously at the body connected to Xiaopingan's consciousness. In the room, in addition to the sand table and the strange wooden frame like a mechanical arm, there is also an offering table. On the offering table, incense is lit, and fruits, lamps, candles and other objects are offered. On the offering table, there is a fairy carrying a long sword. In the portrait of Lu Dongbin, these three people seem to be performing some kind of strange ceremony. Is this Fuqi? Xiaopingan understood at once that the consciousness he was playing at the moment was actually the spiritual thought communicated between Lu Ziyu and Fuqi. What a surprise! This is the first time Xiaopingan has seen the Fuqi scene. The origin of the so-called Bixian games in later generations is the evolution of the Fuqi technique. The Fuqi technique originated from ancient Chinese witchcraft. In history, the art of Fuji as a folk belief is very famous in China. It can communicate with ghosts, gods, and spirits, and is quite effective. For example, in the Wuchen examination of Kangxi, some candidates went to Beijing to ask for help from the Jixian, and the word "I don't know" was written in the Jixian's book. He raised his son and bowed again, asking, "Is it possible that gods and immortals don't know the truth?" Jixian Nida Shu said, "I don't know, I don't know, I don't know." Everyone laughed, thinking that immortals are ignorant, and the subject of that year happened to be the 3 sections of "You can't be a gentleman if you don't know your fate." Because there are so many people who believe in Fuqi, the Fuqi fairy has become a profession. There are even Fuqi aristocratic families who make Fuqi art a family inheritance. Of course, because this profession can make money, there are also many charlatans pretending to be Fuqi children and defrauding people. In the late Qing dynasty and Ming dynasty, at the beginning, when the west wind spread to the east, some charlatans even invited foreign celebrities such as Jesus, Napoleon, Washington, and Tolstoy, who were gradually becoming known to the Chinese people. It was really shocking. These thoughts only flashed through Xiaopingan's consciousness. In the next second, Yin Hong, a child in the room who was connected to Xiaopingan's consciousness, sang "Lu Ziyu is coming" in a melodious voice. Pingan knows how this world pearl should be integrated. This is to spread the purpose of Tei Jinhua to the world through Jitong. Without the divine sense crystal, the possibility of others integrating this world bead is completely zero. As a conscious body, Xiaopingan thought about it and thought of the content of Tei Jinhua purpose in his mind. The body of the boy supporting the shackles began to tremble. With both hands, he pushed the bamboo pen hanging on the wooden plate and started. Lines of dragon-flying and phoenix-like text were left on the sand table. Lucio said, "Nature is called Tao. The name of Tao has no form. It is just one nature, one original spirit. Life is invisible, and it is sent to the light of the sky. The light of the sky is invisible, and it is sent to the two eyes. Since ancient times, the truth of immortality has been passed down orally." Got one. When he saw the bamboo pen starting to write on the sand table, the scribe next to him who had been holding the ink pen immediately copied every word left on the sand table onto the white paper without blinking. In the blink of an eye, the text on the sand table was filled with words. The man standing next to the sand table skillfully pulled the wooden strips on the sand table with his hands. The neat wooden strips brushed across the sand table, leaving just a few words on the sand table. All the words disappeared, the sand table became clean and tidy again, and the hanging bamboo pen began to leave lines of writing under the unconscious push of Jitong's body. As Xiaoping's consciousness changed, the words Tei Jinhua purpose continued to appear on the sand table. In the husband's Xuanhuan, there is sunlight as the ruler, and the tangible thing is the sun in the eyes of humans. Spiritual consciousness leaks out, and there is no such thing as this. Therefore, the way of Jinhua uses the reverse method. Those who return to the light cannot return to the whole body. The essence of it directly returns to the true energy of creation. It is not just a momentary delusion, but directly empties the reincarnation of thousands of kalpas. Therefore, one breath is equivalent to 1 year, a moment in the world, one breath is equivalent to 100 years, and 9 miles are long nights. After the wow sound, mortals gradually when the environment is smooth, and when you are old, you don't look back. When the yang qi declines, it is the realm of the 9 netherworlds. Therefore, the Yin Fu Jing says, the opportunity lies in the eyes. Less than 2 hours later, when Xiaoping'an left the last sentence of Tei Jinhua purpose, the world of the world pearl shattered into pieces in the golden light. The 297-point new upper limit of divine power allowed Xiaoping'an to have 3 more divine bones in his body, and his cultivation level suddenly became the 10th level of a 6-star God-favored person. Of course, the biggest change is the secret mandala. The secret mandala is floating in the sky. The cultivation hall in the fairy mountain has once again expanded in a circle. At the same time, in the cultivation hall, in addition to the original cultivation picture, there are more. A huge jade stele, 10 feet high, stood in the palace, flashing with brilliance. On the jade stele, there were flashing golden words. Those words were exactly Tei Jinhua purpose. The characters summoned from the secret mandala seemed a little restless. The first one to rush to the cultivation hall was Kui Hao. A few days ago, Xiaoping'an summoned the crane to prepare for his escape. Kui Hao saw the crane in the secret mandala, so he hung out with the crane, combing its feathers and playing music for it every day. As time passed, the crane carried Kui Hao to the fairy mountain of the secret mandala, and Kui Hao also proudly entered the cultivation hall to meditate. Otherwise, ordinary people would not be able to enter this place. Looking at the jade tablet in the cultivation hall that read Tei Jinhua purpose, Kui Hao also lost his composure. His eyes glowed, his face flushed, his body trembled, and he almost drooled. "My lord, this is, enlightenment. The secret method of the Great Road, is too luxurious, .. After staring at the purpose of Tei Jinhua for a while, Kui Hao's eyes began to be confused again, and he seemed to be confused. In the end, Kui Hao simply sat under the giant monument of the cultivation hall and ignored Xiaoping'an. Begin to comprehend. Xiaoping'an was also standing in the cultivation hall, looking at the jade tablet of Tei Jinhua purpose, feeling a little shocked. I wonder who can understand the secret. Xiaoping'an knew that the things that appeared in the secret mandala, such as the Analects of Confucius in the Holy Master Hall and the cultivation picture in the cultivation hall, seemed to subtly affect the attributes and growth of all the summoned characters in the secret mandala. Potential, such as the farmers and warriors he summoned, seemed to be influenced by the analects of Confucius, and their wisdom was relatively high. If this purpose of Tei Jinhua can make those with higher qualifications in the secret mandala gain insights and then improve their abilities to a higher level, that would be awesome. The immortal mountain and the cultivation palace are in the sky. Ordinary people cannot enter and understand the mysteries. I wonder if there is any way or world beads to build a passage between the immortal mountain and the ground. Xiaopingan feels that ordinary people should actually have the opportunity to understand the fate of immortality. These founders and sages of China must have left these things in the hope of carrying them forward and being used by the common people. In short, this world pearl is a big profit. With this problem in mind, Xiaopingan withdrew from Jizu. In the underground secret room, Xiaopingan opened his eyes, and then looked at his pocket watch. He had just integrated the world bead Tei Jinhua purpose in less than an hour. If there were more such world beads, he would be here today. Ken advanced to the first level. Xiaopingan left the underground secret room and returned to his study. Not long after, another guest came to his home, the consul general of the Ceylon Empire in Courland, who personally visited.